Hello, this is the Ocean of the Ocean's Deep Blue and getting the camera ready. My cushion camera dolly here is so professional. Anyway, I hope the word got out to everybody. StreamYard has been acting a little funny, and so is my internet and a whole lot of other things. However, here we are. And it usually takes at least 20 minutes for people to see the announcements for some reason that I'm on. But anyway, tonight we're going to have a special guest, NeSe. He's from the Anishinaabe tribe. He's going to be bringing us some native wisdom and probably a whole lot of silliness because that's his nature. He's very playful. And he's an interesting guy. Some of you know him from shows like Kev Baker, Paranormal Portal. He's been on various shows, Truth Frequency Radio, and he has kind of a unique point of view. Boy, that camera work is great tonight, isn't it? Okay, so first I'm going to do my little blurb here that I always do. This is the Ocean's Deep Woo. We do the deepest of woo, and that's all we do. We talk about anything woo, and that means paranormal, spiritual, metaphysical, truth, or anything weird. Experiencers are what most of us are. If you're an experiencer, you have a home here. And we're very much about the experiencers, which NeSe is. And remember, this is just tips, tricks, and hacks for that massively multiplayer virtual reality, total immersion, holofractal learning game called Life on Planet Earth. We laughingly call Life on Planet Earth. So take everything with humor, be kind to our guests. Remember, we don't all have to agree on everything. Everybody sees things a little differently and through a different filter. And so with all that being said, I'm going to welcome NeSe on.
Able to be heard?
There you are. Now you are heard. Okay?
Beautiful. Well, if I may digress, I'm going to utilize the language of my ancestors and do a protocol I was taught for when we introduce ourselves. So, Buju Anin, NeSe Indigenicas Anishinaabe, Menawa, Kevin Richard Shores, Indigenicas Jaganashi Moog, Makwa Nindunde, Menawa Nindogetchida, Aki Minawa Gawa Babi Gani Kog and Dunji Ba Minawa Moorhead, Minnesota, Nungumen Day, Chi Miigwich Gitchimanadu, Gani Kana, Pe Gish Minobimatazi Wewian. And hello and hi, Dee. Thank you for this opportunity for me to share my reality, and maybe we might get a little ahead of ourselves or behind one another so that we could stand up together, because as the band Wookiefoot proclaims in their song, we may not have it all together, but together we can have it all.
Sounds good to me. Hello. Let me say hello to a couple people who came in. I am Pam, one of my best mods. Made it. Yay. And KF Rotman, I know you can. Hey. So we've got a couple of people found me. You got the notice. Thank goodness. I am kind of hidden sometimes. So anyway, NeSe, what would you like to tell us all about tonight? Circle K is in. Okay, Circle K made it. Hey, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well,
People are
if
going to
I,
be filtering for 20 minutes, huh?
oh, that's fine. I'm totally chillaxed with that. It'll be what it
Oh,
was.
we will probably have people filtering in for at least a half an hour. And then there'll be the customary hello everybody, hi, 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 hello, hi. Because we're a very polite and sweet bunch. So but please, in the meantime, illuminate us with something you think we need to know all about, or that you just like to talk about. We'd like to hear some of your background, I'm sure, because some of us don't really know much about your background. So, how did you? What would you say is your? What would you call yourself in terms of? I'm asking you to label yourself. I know.
That's
What would you
interesting
call?
that you say that because I was just inquiring individuals that very same question. What is your top 5 labels? And of course, I have to ponder this for myself. And let me digress with a little story I learned. So, this individual wanted to know a question, and he was told, go see the man up on the mountain. And so he took off on his journey and went through the meadows and went through the fields and went across the rivers and the lakes and in the forest and through the desert and to the foothills and up the mountains and climbed arduously to the man up in the cave and went up to him and said, hey, I have a question. The man said, of course, I'm just paraphrasing the story because it was a lot more formal because most people act more formal when they meet someone for the first time, especially if it's an individual up in a cave. So he says, I have a question. And the man says, go ahead, ask the question. Or the oracle, I guess, semantics. And the man said, should I stop eating sugar? And the individual says, come back and ask me in a month. So a man has to go through all of that painstaking return back home. And in a month's time, new moon to new moon, he makes the journey again, goes through the meadows, the fields, the lakes, the rivers, the forests, the desert, the foothills, and the climb up to the oracle. Gets to the oracle, and the oracle says, yeah, what's your question? I wanted to know again, should I stop eating sugar? And the guru said, yes, instantly. And the man was kind of flabbergasted. And he's like, well, why couldn't you have just told me that last month when I was here? Because I made this journey to come here and rivers and lakes and fields and meadows and forests and foothills and climbing. And oh, my feet hurt. And the guru said, I had to see if I could do it myself.
Okay.
And I find that astounding because who am I to ask of universe to attempt something that I am not willing to do myself or wanting to do myself or needing to do myself or challenging myself to do or not to do? That is the question. To do, because I myself prove it at least once a day that I am full of excrement, and at least I'm regular by utilizing vitamin C to make sure that I at least eliminate some of the poop that I may be full of. So hopefully tonight, as I share, because I care, a delight in my darkness, these precious moments shall be within my memories as long as I'm living this lifetime or life illusion. So back to
Well,
your question.
hi, hi, Ben. Ben is in. Ben's got a question for you right away. Are Bigfoots real?
Ooh, Ben, we'll put a pin in that, and I'll answer Dee's question first because I don't want to be dismissive. My labels, my first label I prefer
Right.
is NeSe.
Oh, well,
That
we can
is
get that one done.
that is in homage to my Anishinaabe ancestry. The French called us Ojibwe. The English called us Chippewa. However, in our language, we say Anishinaabe. Our boundaries were all the way to the East Coast around Massachusetts, all the way west to the Mississippi and down the Mississippi and up into Canada was the Anishinaabe territory. We were considered the mound builders. Some considered us the giants, but that's where I get NeSe. It is the first two syllables of my Anishinaabe Indigo name that I was given by my namesake. So that is my first label. My second label would be Kevin Richard Shores, which is the label I was given by my parents in their marriage, in their union of love. And so I wish to honor and respect that label that was given to me. My third label would be Anishinaabe. My fourth label would be Anishinaabe Inini. And Anishinaabe is, as I stated earlier, that is the individual of the Anishinaabe, which is plural. So to be Anishinaabe. My fourth is Anishinaabe Inini. That means an Anishinaabe male because I have a penis, if the vernacular is correct here. And the fifth
Wow.
label,
Yeah, you can define what you are. You're a male. That's very good. Some people can't quite do that. Please go on.
and the fifth
Oh,
label I
hello,
have
Bob.
not, the fifth label I have not come to a conclusion to have. So out of those four labels, like Pavlov's dog, I would probably salivate at the bell, metaphorically.
Metaphorically, for any of those. Oh, okay. Well, Bomber is in. Yeah. And does anybody else come in? Anyway,
Now,
oh,
Ben's question.
they have, yeah, we have questions coming in already. Like I said, Ben wants to know if Sasquatch is real, if the Bigfoot is real. What do you think of it?
I think, feel, believe the answer is yes.
And that's the short form. Uh-oh, I hear something. What's the
Well,
next
maybe
one?
it's Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Pugwashi.
I better check it because we have so many things weird going on in this building right now. I'm going to go check. In
Isn't
the
that life in
in
general?
the
I'll just
meantime,
babble on and babble on while you're checking.
sure. Babylon, yeah, sure.
Well, I'll
Oh, but you
share.
can answer Circle K's question. Does the moon have secrets?
Ooh, somebody knew they could trigger me on the moon. Absolutely. But to go back to Ben, I'll share a story that I've shared on Paranormal Portal before. In my discernment of the occurrence is that it quite possibly was a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, a Pugwashi. So my grandparents had a lake home on Detroit Lakes in northern Minnesota, and they lived on the South Shore Drive. And about 2.5 miles down the road was a place called Longbridge. And there at Longbridge, they had a little store and they had a little counter deli and where you could rent boats and fishing guides and the such. And my grandparents had those very old, ancient, heavy duty steel bicycles that you had to put all of your weight into getting the momentum of those big, huge tires to get rolling. So as I decided one early afternoon to go to Longbridge because I had some money in my pocket and I wanted some treats. I started rolling that way. So I am heading west and then it curves to the north around the lake. So it's nothing but farmland in this area to the south of the road. There was a old Christmas tree farm, and then past the farm was a huge cornfield, and then was a very treacherous curve. And as I am going past the farm field, in the middle of the field, there is a clump of trees. And then as I'm coming past, out of the left corner of my eye, which would be the south, I see all of a sudden something hunched down in the corn. Now, the corn is starting to become brown. So that means it's harvest time. And when corn is ready to harvest, it's like 6 feet tall.
Right.
And so when I all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye see this, or believe I see this thing hunched down, I turn my head to look, and I could see a swath. Is that what it's called? When you go through a field and you can see the trail that it leaves. I think that's the term.
Call it what you want. We know what
Well,
you mean.
yeah. So anyway, I could see the path that this thing that I witnessed cut through the corn. And then as soon as I looked straight back to the road, I realized that this path is intersecting right at the start of the curve of the road. And I'm thinking, if this thing was that tall, and if it wanted to, it could make that distance in no time whatsoever. And so, with
Wow.
all of my might, I put the pedal literally to the metal and had to put my full weight in it to run around, roll around that corner, and then get to Longbridge. And I was so disturbed that when I got to Longbridge, I called back to Grandpa and Grandma's, actually my foster grandparents and grandparents, and asked if somebody could come and pick me up, or if any of my cousins were around to meet me. And there was nobody there. So I had to sit there and gain the courage to go back that same way. And the thing that's the bummer is just around where that corner is, it's like a lot of woodland. So it's, because nobody was like building around the corner. And
Right.
yeah. And so on the way back, not only did I make it rather dangerous because I stayed on the north side. So that means if any vehicles were coming around the corners, they'd be coming at me. And usually they hug the turn when they make the corners. And so I put myself at risk there, but there was no way I was going to go on that side towards the cornfield. And yeah, so that was my experience. Other experiences in the woods, many times hearing noises and the such and not knowing what it is. And especially at nighttime where it's, just a little more comfortable staying by the fire or in the tent.
Yeah. Um, well, that sounds like it was quite harrowing when you don't know what that is, but you see it as a or now you would know it is probably a Sasquatch. Have to say hi to Gemini Moon and James Ortiz, who made it in. Thank you so much for coming. Um, we have a lot of cornfields around here too, so I know exactly what you mean. And and we also have mounds around here, NeSe. We have one right in Towner's Woods that was dug up and then And then the natives of the area decided that they had to put it back, put all the bones back. But yes, they were indeed giants. And
Well, you know, if I'll digress a little bit too, because I appreciate the words that you gave me at the beginning of the intro and that. And because of my situation, I am 100% service connected, disabled veteran. While I was in the military, I believe I was given experimental jib jabs or whatever they're calling in my arm that wreaked havoc on me and 700,000 other veterans and caused me to be confined to a wheelchair and lose my sight. I've been an advocate for veterans' rights for a long time and also Native rights. And I've been into the paranormal, the metaphysical, the supernatural, the weird, the woo. Only, well, I can't say only. When I was a child, I was very interested in all of this stuff, Leonard Nimoy and In Search of series on TV. And I remember reading all the books about UFOs and paranormal and Ripley's Believe It or Not. You know, so I was always kind of interesting child. I was one of those kids that kept asking why. And then when I got a library card, I was just enamored because I was able to find why. And I would go to the library and check out books upon books. And so when I got out of the military, I started getting sick. And then I was asking why. And as I started researching why I was sick and other veterans were sick, I learned of Gulf War illness. And then the only places I could find information pertaining Gulf War illness was on some of the same websites of the internet where I got caught for several hours researching about not only Gulf War illness, but secret societies, the paranormal, the metaphysical, and the such. And so I got caught up in the whole realm of conspiracy theories. I remember in 1994, I went to an individual's place because he was like, "You have to check out this VHS tape." And I cannot confirm or deny that we may or may not have eaten some psilocybus mushrooms while witnessing this VHS tape, but it was William Bill Cooper. And he was giving his presentation of the Mystery Babylon. And it was the transcript of his book, Behold a Pale Horse. This was before the book was written, when he was just finishing the book. And we sat and watched that video, and then I demanded to take the video home, and it just deepened my spelunking down the rabbit hole where I have spent thousands of hours down trying to find out why. And
spelunking, word, yes.
so I've done the rounds. I was on Art Bell. I don't know if that's a badge or not. Way back in the day.
Here to us, it is, yes.
Well, I'm so cynical now. I've become so cynical now that it's disheartening because we have the full spectrum of truth, you know, and if at one perspective the truth is, then the other perspective is lies. And so we have that full spectrum where we have people that are telling the truth and we have people that are lying about it. And unfortunately, as I utilize my discernment or tools of questing the truth, I find myself being disappointed by the number of people that I meet that lie or embellish. And I would even state that I am guilty. I am a hypocrite. I am the first one to raise my hand and wave it when they say any hypocrites here. I'm the first one to be yes. because I am living this existence in the United States of confusion. Well, some people call it the United States of America. But I love this land. I love this universe. I love this precious moment that I'm existing, because that is the blessing that I've been given, is to exist at this precious moment. And so, bring it on. And so as we utilize these different tools of discernment to find our truth, I just hope that I can find balance to those moments of when I was younger, when I was embellishing, like kids on the playground, where we're growing up, where we had like a little cluster of hoodlums or scallywags or the kids of the block. It was a bunch of peer pressure to
Were
do.
you? Were you Spanky or
Um,
Alfalfa?
who was I? Uh,
You weren't Buckwheat, were
okay.
you? Okay.
No, I was, Buckwheat's little friend who just kept saying,
Okay.
I can't remember what his name was, but that is aging me, right? Knowing the little rascals, our gang.
I think you're in good company. We're not a bunch of little kids here, except at heart.
Oh, absolutely. My inner child refuses to grow up or
Well,
go to
good for
bed at an accurate time.
us too. It was one of the promises we all made ourselves, wasn't it? And look where it's gotten us. And now we instead, a lot of times we sit there and go, well, I'd love to be able to go to sleep at 8 o'clock or whatever, but I have all this work to do. So, uh, um, anyway, that changes with time, and especially if you have children, you just kind of wish that you could take the nap and they would watch the house while you're asleep. But anyway, or at least that's how I hear it. I haven't had any children in this particular life, or at least not any human. So, anyway, I might as well go on asking questions. Um, Somebody was waiting for a lung transplant. I don't
Oh,
know
Kev
any.
Baker.
Oh, Kev Baker, maybe.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what they're talking about. I'm looking for
Yes, my
questions.
my my dear brother.
Hmm.
Well, I label him my brother. We've had some incredible moments together, and it's been a privilege and an honor to share space with him on not only his show, the KBS show, or KBS, but also the 3 years of Freaky Friday.
Okay. Well, I'd kind of like to know some things myself while they're still coming up with some questions. And by the way, Ben is one of our best question askers. He's usually asking a bunch of questions. So, hey,
Oh,
Ben,
he brought up
get
the
on
moon.
the moon.
Yeah, the secrets of the
Trees of the
moon.
moon. That was Circle K's question.
Oh, sorry, Ben. But yeah,
Ben, Sasquatch.
the secret of the moon. Well, I ask of thee and all that are listening, if you could assist me in trying to find out who the regulatory committee is, the grand poobah, the authority of authority that denotes on the calendars of when to write in the new moon and the full moon. And I ask this because in 2018, going into 2019, on January 1st was a full moon. And then the next full moon was January 31st. So we had a blue moon, but not only was it a blue moon, It was a blue moon, a super moon, a blood moon, and a what was the other one? There was 4 different labels for that specific moon. And then,
Flower. Let's see. We had a blood moon that was a flower moon. We had a blood moon that was a wolf moon. We had a blood moon that was a. I can't remember them all either.
right, but this was in 2019 of January. And then we had February. Now, as we know, February has 28 days unless of a leap year, and then there's 29 days. So then on the 31st of January was this blue moon. Then we had the full month of February. And I recall it quite clearly because we as Anishinaabe were wondering, when do we do our rituals? Because we have ceremonies and rituals on the new moons and the full moons, or we utilize them for synchronizing with the greater cycles. So February, there was no full moon. And then the next full moon we had was on March 1st. And then we had the next full moon on March 31st. So again, we get another blue moon. And the significance of a blue moon is 2 full moons in a lunar cycle of the calendar month.
Right.
Because the Gregorian calendar month is only beneficial for commerce. That's the absolute reason of why we have time. Because it is a prison and it is an illusion. So commercialism can continue and commerce can continue. And somebody can continue to count beans or dollars or pennies or rubles or diamonds or whatever, doubloons. So all of a sudden.
Yeah. I also have a feeling that that's why the months are not all the same length, is so that they can play little games with us.
Oh, absolutely. It's and we can get even more details into it because the moon is just supposedly, allegedly by astrology, I am a lunar baby Ulta Maximus, which is interesting because I am very fascinated with the moon and I look at it as my major calendar tool. So all of a sudden in 2018, not only did this weird occurrence happen, but if I may ask this question, Dee, do you remember how many days a lunar month is?
27, 28, I think.
Well, technically they say 27.6.
Yeah.
Okay. However, we in the Anishinaabe, we say it's 28 days. And this 28 days is in alliance with a woman's menstrual cycle.
Yes, it is.
So in this precious moment of time, the counting of beans from 2018 into 2019, the lunar calendar month increased 2 days. It is now 30 days.
Now, wait a minute. This is by whose count?
Go to a calendar, count it out.
Honestly.
Yes.
And
nobody
by the Julian calendar, you mean by the Julian calendar?
The Gregorian calendar. We are in a Gregorian calendar.
Gregorian?
Okay. Yes. And the powers that should not be somewhere, somehow, has directed the whole calendar people, those that print out calendars,
right,
to have it in there that it's a 30-day occurrence. So this means that the calendar, someone knew in advance that this occurrence was going to happen. And now, some people keep talking about this thing called the Mandela
Mandela
Effect.
Effect, yeah.
Yeah. And I think my personal thoughts, feelings, beliefs is that the Mandela Effect is absolutely a psyops that will have us question history and not be confident, because the powers that should not be want us to believe, to feel, to think that we are inadequate on all facets of our existence. So if we can doubt our own memory, then we can doubt somebody else's memory even more so. And then now they even have a label that it's a Mandela effect.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the occurrence of the labeling of it, Mandela effect, this is because when Nelson Mandela passed, because he was such a world known entity, that they had to plan his memorial, his funeral. So he was literally put on ice for, I believe, almost 10 months before they finally had his memorial, because they had to plan it so that the dignitaries, the rulers, the presidents, the kings, the queens of the world could all gather for his memorial. And interesting enough, when they all gathered for his memorial, not 50 miles away, within a 24-hour period of his memorial, was one of the oldest known sacred sites that was going to have an apocalyptic occurrence, where the sun was going to rise between two pillars that were set up specifically for this occurrence to happen. And it just happened to be within I want to say it was like 37, between so many miles away from all of these dignitaries, all of these leaders, all of these kings, all of these elitists, just happened to be gathering at this specific moment. And was the excuse Nelson Mandela's memorial? So they could gather and witness this auspicious moment of the cycles.
Interesting. So you're saying the reason that's the real reason they kept him on ice for a while.
Well,
It's because it correlated with something that they all wanted an excuse to gather for.
right. And the powers that should not be will never, ever let a occurrence go by without it furthering their agenda. And so when Nelson Mandela dies, everybody's like, oh, Nelson Mandela died, and everybody, the world is talking about it. But then all of a sudden, almost 10 months later, when they have a memorial, they bring up the news spin again. Nelson Mandela died, and people are like, wait, I thought he died like last year. And so that started this whole pondering of, do you remember this and do you remember that? Because it is proven, and I can prove it, that there is a difference between his story and history.
Yes.
And I can prove that in my own heritage, because I was raised what I labeled a concrete Indian, because I wasn't raised on the reservation. When I talk to people, they're like, you're Indian, you're Native American. And most people, they expect me to be like, yes, I am Native American. And this is how I talk, because I am the noble savage.
This is how Native Americans must talk.
Well, that's the stereotype. That's
like Tonto from Lone Ranger, yes, or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No way, Kibosabi. I'm not going into town. Every time I go to town. Remember that
No
Bill
way
Cosby when he
chemotherapy
was
either.
funny?
Anyway, no way
So
chemotherapy.
so
Um,
yeah, I went to college to get my Native American studies. And
oh,
because I used to ask my grandma, what's it like to be Indian? What's it like to be Indian? Because I was conned to be a good little Indian, not bindis, but feathers.
right.
And I find it a little upsetting that we're in 2022 and they're still utilizing the word Indian.
Well, you know what they say before, wasn't it in the 70s? They changed that. If you were an Indian before the 70s, then you were an Indian. If you were an Indian after the 70s, you were born after that. Now you're a Native American. That's our little joke about it. It's like they changed it at some point and just kind of, oh, now we must call them Native American.
Well,
So,
I mean, technically, anybody who's born on the North American continent or the South American continent can proclaim being a Native American. So I even relabel it as Paleo American. So I'll say
Paleo American.
maybe that's number 5. Maybe that's label number
No,
5,
you're
Paleo American.
even though you were probably a little less pale than some. And I know that there were tribes here that were. I mean, there is a guy who studied this and has all kinds of information about many tribes of various colors being here before the settlers ever came. And also, it looks like the mud flood people are beginning to prove that there were many civilizations with advanced civilization here before the settlers came. And so there's so much there, and we know that there was a pretty thriving culture here before the settlers came. However, well, I'm kind of like you in that I had to learn about my background differently. I didn't grow up on a reservation or with Indian elders or anything around me. I had to kind of learn it. My grandmother, I learned, my great grandmother, White Horse, was White Horse. I'm a White Horse rider. And, I knew that, but I didn't know very much about my background. Not very much at all, really. So a lot of us kind of had our uh, our history. We don't know. We're kind of like orphans that way. you know, we don't know.
Well, I've
But
proclaimed that if you are at least 4 or 5 generations in America, it's more likely you will have Paleo American blood because there was back in the day when Lincoln was president, most Native Americans didn't claim to be Native Americans. They would claim to be like Italian or Middle Eastern
yeah,
because it was so frowned upon, in the mid 1800s. Plus this was the time when they were just wiping us out from
right.
smallpox blankets to killing
Oh,
all
the
the
smallpox
bison.
plague, those kinds, wasn't it?
So
Well,
biological warfare.
yeah, biological warfare. It's been around a long time, hasn't it? Um, well, now that people are actually with an more open mind and with different eyes looking back into our history, we are finding out that it indeed is just a story, and the people who
Written
came
by the
on top wrote it.
winners.
Yeah, and when I look at what history is being written today, I know that people will be totally confused, probably by it. So maybe it's always been that way.
Well, the
One
beautiful
side note,
distraction of all is keeping us distracted from the powers that should not be. Because if they can keep us with our, and this is where, forgive me, I'm sorry, pity me,
Yeah.
because, if I'm not sharing something that can help you find enlightenment or a giggle or something positive, then by all means leave right away and don't listen to me at all, because I would rather everybody be doing something that is benefiting themselves forward than wasting any precious moments listening to me, a hypocrite that's full of excrement.
I do have something to input on the Mandela effect, though, because I know a lot of very old people who remember things quite differently. And one of them was telling me that one of the strange things about the Mandela effect is he remembers that when Nelson Mandela, see what it is people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison. I did too. I remembered that too. To find out he was still alive and died again was very confusing for a lot of people. However, this older fellow said they had made a great big deal because I had heard his wife's eulogy for him. And I'm like, I know I watched his wife eulogize and they were talking about this. That's what the weirdness was, is that we'd already heard all this. And
But that's our
then,
that's our per I mean, I agree and hear what you're saying, but that's our perception. Because I mean, I'll be the first one to say, hey, there's many a times where I couldn't remember where I put my cup of coffee or
okay,
my set of keys or my wallet. So in all of
well,
these little experiences of forgetfulness, how can we say, no, I remember it this way, and by gosh, by darn it, it is that way.
well, I agree that we all have different filters, and we are quite capable of. There have been many, many incidences, and my mother was quick to point this out, where there were typos made and all kinds of mistaken impressions made. However, what this older man told me was that when he was put in jail, they had a mock funeral for him. And that is what people are remembering because they were trying to draw attention to him to get him out of jail. And so what we were hearing was actually not an actual funeral. That was his perception of it. And I kind of remember something like that too. But once again, it's so long ago, I was a kid. Um, but there have been many since I died, since my death. I have to tell you, I must interject, that I have had many personal Mandela effects, including recently one of my friends who was taller than me is now shorter than me. And we checked our shoes and we checked everything. There was nothing different that we were wearing or anything. And I don't know how to explain that. And there's a heck of a lot of other things I cannot explain. So some things are very explainable. And, human memory is very fallible and very malleable. That is absolutely a fact. So I totally agree. There is that whole section of that there. However, there are some things I simply cannot explain. Like Ed McMahon was never a part of Publishers Clearinghouse. That's the one that really shook me. That's one of the worldwide ones that shook me because I remember growing up seeing that every day. They had that on the TV, Ed McMahon, Publishers Clearinghouse. Now they're saying Ed McMahon was never their spokesman. It never happened. So, you can't blame people. You can't blame people. There's other things I'm not going to go into now because I'd rather hear your take on some of this. But there are some things that I can't explain that way. Can't explain. It's just a mere as an easy write-off, unfortunately. It would be more comforting if I could. But anyway.
Well, isn't that another challenge that we have, is that we want that security of comfort.
Yeah.
And all the way back to the womb, where, sometimes there's nothing greater than being curled up in a ball with 3 or 4 blankets upon you.
Right.
Which I think goes into that faint memory of being so secure in our mother's womb. And we want to create this false sense of security on our whole facets. As a Native American, we divide ourselves as physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And within all of those spokes, metaphorically, like a wheel, when they are all strengthened and working in tandem, then the wheel can move forward more easily. And so when we can find that security, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritual, we seemingly find balance easier.
Yes, I agree. I really try and thoroughly understand where a person may be coming from. And like I said, on this show, everybody's got an opinion and we respect that. And if this is the way that you perceived it and this is the way that you experienced it, then doggone, you have a right to have that. We are not going to sit here and say, no, you're wrong. That didn't happen. We are not going to sit here and gaslight experiencers, because this is what happened to us. I mean, this is what our government has been doing. And as you say, the ones who should not be in charge have always done to us, is they've always gaslighted us, if you understand my meaning.
Well, I have labeled it the Santa Claus syndrome, where, and I'll share my experience as I usually can quite easily. One Christmas, I proclaimed that I am going to get to the bottom of this figure called Santa Claus that I was told about existing. And my father was, go ahead, do it. And so I stayed up all night waiting to catch this entity. And unfortunately for me, I thought I could eat an entire bag of oranges while waiting up. And if anyone has experience eating a whole bag of oranges, they'll find out that it'll push stuff through you quite quickly after
Fruit
a while.
does that. Yes, fruit does that.
And so here I am, lasting almost the entire night, and the dawn is rising, and I'm bouncing and clenching, and I could no longer handle it. So I run into the bathroom and get on the toilet, and almost at that moment, I hear, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, boys. And then the door shuts, and I'm just like, no. So I clench it and jump out of the bathroom. And my dad's there in the living room, and he's like, you just missed him. And I'm just like, what? And he's like, look. And he pointed out the front windows in the living room. And right in front of the windows on the sidewalk were these brand new Schwinn bicycles, 10 speeds. And I was all excited, and I ran in and woke up my brother, and he came out, and we threw on our boots and went outside and checking out these new bicycles. And then I look at the ground, which had a light dusting of snow the night before. and I see the bike tracks coming from the garage with boot tracks next to them.
Ah,
Then I notice the boot tracks coming out of the house, going to the garage door, out the big garage door, back into the big door, and out the small door, back into the house. And so I walk into the back door. I look down at the ground, and sure enough, there was my dad's rubbers. Back in the day, we called them rubbers, and they were just kind of like a simple
galoshes.
galoshes, yes. And so I looked up at my father, and he had this big grin on him. But once he saw me look up at him from his boots, he lost that smile rather quickly, and I chastised him. And I was adamant about how he lied to me and how when we boys lied, we had to sit on the edge of the bathtub with a bar of soap in our mouth. And for years, he's been lying to us about this. And that was the moment where I realized adults lie to children for many reasons.
Time. All the time.
And so I call
That
that
is
Santa Claus syndrome, to where in our existence, as we go through, there are moments when somebody actually calls us out on how much BS we're full of. And they show you the charts and the facts and the data and the presentation that validates their proclaiming that we're full of it. And it's almost like when somebody takes your snowball, your little snow globe, and shakes it all up, and you have to let everything settle again. And then you're like, okay, now let's continue on life. And that's the way I felt going from grade school into middle school, from middle school into high school, from high school into the military. So it was one moment, or precious moments throughout my existence, where we woke up, we had an apocalypse. And that's the same way I felt when I started investigating about Gulf War illness. And then I started learning about secret societies and the cryptics and the cryptoids and UFOs, and so it's that whole, take it with a
sure.
grain of salt.
Santa. Santa's a cryptid, kind of. So
Oh
he's
yeah,
not.
when you investigate and you look back at where that entity came from, you find some incredible uh, um, pieces of truth where that individual character was very, very like the river banks. They controlled the flow of information.
Right.
Like Forrestal told Kennedy before he accidentally fell out of the window of Bethesda Hospital.
Yeah.
Everything presented before the citizens is manipulated, manipulated one way or another to continue on the system of control by the powers that should not be.
I really had a very similar experience. Santa was one of my first tests of the veracity of certain things, and my first taste of, yeah, this is a worldwide conspiracy, and everybody buys into it, and uh, everybody adds to it. Basically, they've added so much. Oh, but if you look back far enough, you also find Krampus, which we forgot all about, right? And Krampus was part of that legend. And they have, in some places, brought back the Krampus legend. So there's a lot of things pertaining to Santa Claus that we could get into, and maybe closer to Christmas. But we have Columbus Day coming up. And, some people are going to be celebrating. It's funny because on my calendar, it mentions Columbus Day and it also mentions Indigenous Peoples Day. And I'm there going, well, I guess you take your choice. Are you going to be celebrating Columbus or are you going to be celebrating Indigenous people? So, do you have anything to say about that whole issue with Columbus and why Columbus Day even exists and so on?
Well,
Because
Columbus was one of the pivotal points of maintaining the continuation of power for those that should not be. The North and South Islands, called America, they were well known to have inhabitants on it. Unfortunately, the inhabitants on these islands were so well civilized that they did not know how to go there and take over these islands. And so one of the tools they had to utilize is biological warfare. If you go and follow historically the Knights Templar, and in that famous day of 1307, October 13th, Friday, when the Knights Templar were to be rounded up so that the King of France and the Pope can steal all of their assets,
right,
the entire fleet disappeared. The largest fleet known in civilization at that time was the Knights Templar,
yes,
where 1/3 of the fleet ended up in Scotland, 1/3 of the fleet ended up in England, and the other third went off to the Caribbeans, the pirates of the Caribbeans, the pirateers of the ocean. However, I believe that they were sent over to figure out strategically how can they take over North and South America. This is where that Oak Island was a strategic stronghold for the powers that should not be, so they can watch and plan the takeover of North America. Um, Also, what they did is the plagues. They would take all the dead bodies of the plagues and ships that were to be decommissioned, and they would drag them out to sea and let the bodies just rot. And the boats would eventually find the transatlantic current, which will just send them right across the Atlantic Ocean, where they would
right,
crash upon the shores of South and North America. Thus, Native Americans, in their curiosity, would check out the ships, all of a sudden find all these dead bodies, and bring the sickness back to the villages. To where you look historically from 1492 all the way up to Plymouth Rock, there's an estimated in the hundreds of millions of indigenous people that were wiped out because of disease, or I would say biological warfare. Then after that, the Spaniards allowed the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria to travel across in a whole commercial venture. And if you remember, those ships historically were taught for them to have the big, huge cross of Malta on it.
yes,
Ironically, if you look at the Catholic Church, I think they're disbanding the group of Malta. but that's another story. But that big, huge red cross, which was a Masonic symbol. So why would they need to fly these big, huge red cross on their sails? So their brethren, the pirates of the Caribbean, the other Templars, would know in advance, hey, they're flying under our banner, and so we'll let them through.
Aha. I see. Wow, well, that's something I didn't know all of that about it. And there is so much we could go into there. But what I want to get to is more, since this is the Deep Woo show, we want to get into some Deep Woo. So, and by the way, I did see your post about Ken saying that as soon as his parents turned Jehovah's Witnesses, Christmas, birthdays, and everything else were canceled, Easter, everything. So he got disillusioned rather young, too, when he was about 5 years old. So we all kind of got disillusioned early, which may be why we are seeking out conspiracies these days. Maybe we were lucky. We got red pilled kind of young, didn't we? Let's go into the deep woo of the star people. Now we're told that the Native Americans know about the star people.
Well, because of my interest in UFOs from a young age, I would ask elders, what about extraterrestrials? And their answer was more or less, what about them? It wasn't
You're right.
it wasn't about, oh no, they don't exist or anything. It's like, what do you want to know?
Right. It wasn't if they exist, it was what do you want to know about how they exist?
and and I wish I could remember the Anishinaabe word, but we actually have a word in its um, in its explanation. The word means sky sled or people mover.
Mm,
You know, kind of like we had in the winter, we had dog sleds,
right.
and so the word sled isn't. You
It's a
get the
vehicle.
yeah, more or less. It's like a vehicle or something to transport individuals.
Just like a chariot.
Yeah.
Chariots of the gods. Yes. Yes.
You know, and everybody's all like, well, why didn't the Native Americans create the wheel? And the biggest reason is because when you live in synchronicity with your surroundings, you realize how important to leave the trees alone. And in North America, if you look at the history of deforestation, the North American forest were multitudes, billions of great northern pines, which grew over 120 feet tall and some incidents almost 20 to 30 feet in diameter. And these would be riddled from the state of Minnesota almost all the way up to the boundaries of North and South Dakota and all the way across to the East Coast. And a lot of these trees were cut down and sent down the rivers to build all these huge cities on the main rivers that head south, especially like New Orleans. Most of New Orleans was built by Minnesota lumber.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. I could see that. Yeah.
In Chicago and Minneapolis. But yeah, extraterrestrials, you know, from what I am told, making me conclude that there are thousands of these entities out there. And just as you hear this Illuminati or the Masons, they talk about as above, so below. the microcosm, the macrocosm. It is the absolute. If you look at a magnet, you can see the similarities of as above, so below, or the microcosm and the macrocosm.
Yes.
And like here on this spheroidal thing that people call the Earth, we have all of these councils, these groups of individuals that gather and they discuss this, that, and the other thing. I absolutely believe that in the macrocosm, that there are extraterrestrial races that are out there discussing, this, that, and the other thing pertaining the solar system, pertaining the spiral arm of the galaxy. And I would not be surprised whatsoever if an extraterrestrial group came down to Earth and held out a piece of paper, and it would be the deed of the Earth. And they'll be like, hey, just like a landlord can check on its tenant and say, look, you are not taking care of the building, you're being evicted.
See, I tend to think of it more as a farm rather than that. I think probably the powers that shouldn't be are using it as a farm. Some people say prison. I would say it's more like a farm, because aren't we getting milked and fleeced all the time?
Well, I like the metaphor I use where there's one little alien group that's sitting there at this huge council arena, and they're all, oh, that's right, nobody speaks alien here. But they're saying, hey, these humans, they'll figure it out, give them an opportunity, and they'll become enlightened, and they'll collectively just grow. And then there's that other extraterrestrial entity where they're all, and they're saying, no, they're like a virus and they're destroying everything they touch. We need to get rid of them. And then you'll have another entity from beyond who will be like, and that is translated, we'll take them, they taste like chicken.
I'm told that we taste more like sweet pork, but hey, who knows what we taste like to aliens?
And
Anyway.
all these additives and preservatives are just the marinating sauce that they've been putting on us, because as they travel
That's what I
from
think.
Alpha Centauri to Polaris and to Sirius,
Make
the
us taste a little better.
the planet Earth is like a galactic 7-Eleven where they stop by and pick up a few billion humans and say, yeah, we'll just put them on ice. The rapture.
500 million served.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't that be the big old kick in the butt where where all of a sudden the rapture, the defining moment of the rapture is, did you eat at McDonald's? And if yes, you're taken up for a source of food.
I
I
worked
just had the
there.
French fries. I just had the French fries.
I worked there for a while, and I will tell you, I couldn't work. I had to. I was poor and had to work, and I could get a job as in McDonald's. But as I was there, I felt very bad about serving up death on a platter, on a styrofoam platter, as I called it. It wasn't exactly my first choice of work, but we kind of get forced into things if we want to live on this planet quite a lot, actually. If you
Well,
think about
there lies the rub. They make that comment that we are born into sin. And if you look in America, what was one of the first things that they did to these newborn infants but blacken their souls with ink and stamp our birth certificate.
Yeah, which actually is owned by people. I mean, our social security number goes to accounts. We are currency, apparently. People have
Current
checked that out.
currency, current sea.
Exactly.
The river
Exactly.
banks control the flow. You are a
Exactly.
deliverer. Your mother delivered you at the dock
Exactly.
where a certificate of birthing, of birth, when a
Right.
shipment is brought in, the Department of Commerce regulates the census where they count the citizens, the products of America, where
Yes.
you are a number.
Yes.
And what a beautiful, remarkable ploy to do a census by saying everybody in America is going to get a number of checks. And so if they send everybody 3 checks, if all 3 of those checks gets cashed, then yes, there is a D, there is a NeSe. And they just were able to do a quick count and make bank on it.
Yep.
Just like
Oh, I've been
Walmart every
down
now
that
and then.
one. Been down that stream.
Just like
um,
Walmart or Target, where every now and then they have to do a product count and they have to take a census.
Sorry. Doesn't it sort of sound like we're inventory?
We are inventory.
Right.
And unfortunately, because of certain circumstances, some of these individuals that are so old are obsolete. So, what is the best way for their demise to come about where we can continue to profit off their slow and miserable deaths?
Right. You don't want to kill them quick because if you kill people quick, you don't really get the full amount out of them. You have to kill them slow so that there are expensive medical procedures and so that, I mean, all kinds of things can still be charged if they're just sick for a long time, right?
Well, you got the fence, you got the fence on the right and the fence on the left, and the fence is so far on one side that you can't see the other side, and you're just in the middle of the herd going where to the meat grinder. And if you
All you
happen
can
to
see is the other cow's butt. Okay.
and if you happen to jump the fence, then they have the wranglers that will put you back in or bring you straight to the grinder right away.
Circle K says, nah, I can't get good human no more. I would tend to agree since they're changing the genome. You can't really get really good human no more. But,
Well, there is the infamous human check. Have you heard of the human check? Well,
oh,
there's
the
many of them. So if you go and you look at somebody's pinky, and if you look at the gap between the tip of the pinky and the tip of the ring finger, if they're close to the same length, they're still more human. But if you've been paying attention for the last 20 years, the there's almost I've met people that almost have like an inch and a half gap where their pinky is so much shorter than their ring finger.
really?
Yep.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
And the pinky is going to be obsolete.
Eventually, maybe that's why some of these aliens only have 3 fingers and no thumb.
Yeah, well,
And
remember
they
the
thumbs are
six
such a
fingers,
big deal.
the polydactyloid. Is that what it's called? Yeah,
Polydactyl. My cat's polydactyl. Oh,
polydac.
well, actually, his name is Cowboy, but he's polydactyl. He's a purist. Um, YJ Overlander just came in. Hi, YJ. Every person is an amount of money the nation can count on borrowing. Yeah, that's right. I'm beginning to think the answer to it all is to buy a sailboat, despite having a nation flag living in international waters. I have thought of that as a sovereign human being. I have thought of that. I have thought of the same thing, YJ.
Well, you
Um,
have to be really careful with that whole proclaiming of sovereign entity. You know, now even in the court systems, there. I can't remember the specifics of the label, but you can be getting in trouble for that because it is an arduous task to prove that you are the king or queen of your dominion or your
that's
domicile.
right. I had asked somebody, I actually had somebody from Canada ask me to be a queen of there was a territory that, an island, I think it was, they wanted me to be the queen of an island. So that they could have, have their own everything, revenue and so on and so forth. And they had, I guess, looked up all of the things you had to do to get that. It was like me and actually one of my friends, they wanted him to be king first. And he wasn't sure he really wanted to do that. And they asked me if I would be queen. And I said, I'm not really sure I want to do that either. Because it was one of those places where you'd freeze your butt off up in Canada. Up
If
in Nova
I
Scotia.
was king of the forest.
Right. So
Ruff,
I
ruff.
kind of know a little bit about that, but and there are people who want to have a sovereign nation. I suppose it could be done once we get anti-gravity, or perhaps we could. I don't know, but you got to watch out being in airspace, though. There may be problems with airspace.
Oh, absolutely. When Obama bought thousands and thousands of drones, and then all of a sudden people started asking if you were buying all of these drones just for watching, why did you purchase all of the drones that had the accessory arm
Armament,
for weapons?
right? Oh dear, Circle K says the little toe on my left, but might as well be obsolete. Ah, that's it. Our little fingers, our pinkies are going away. How will people be able to tell when we are being classy without a pinky to raise as we sip tea?
Maybe
Oh,
that was one of the high signs of doing that, raising the pinky. So those that were in the know would know if you were human or alien.
oh. Well, I know I'm probably, I have to be, I know, come on. I know I'm a hybrid. I know I am. But I also know most of us are. As a matter of fact, some people say, or actually some entities say, all of us are hybrids if you go back far enough.
Well, the
We're all
Anishinaabe, if you break down the etymology of the word Anishinaabe, it means when the spirit was brought down to the earth or to the planet. And does that hit any memory points of another definition where it is similar to that?
Oh, you mean from heaven to earth?
Yes,
Those who fell?
yes.
And I believe that was actually that could be a reference both to, I think, both to from the sky and also vibrationally, because I'm quite sure there was a vibrational shift that had a lot to do with that too. And I mean, since everything is vibration, I mean, much smarter people came up with this than me. Okay. Although I came up with it pretty young, I figured this out really young. I don't know how I did. I have to think maybe I was influenced, but really quite young, I came up with, oh my God, everything is really energy. Oh my God, you know, which led me down a lot of rabbit holes. And I mean, I was pretty young when I figured that out. I can't remember, but I mean, I remember thinking, I can't tell this in Sunday school. You know, I used to get in all kinds of trouble in Sunday school. So my parents were religious. So yeah, I've come up with these thoughts too. So
Well,
so you are descended from somewhere above, right? Anishinaabe.
well, it's really, I find it pretty amazing and synchronistic that if you look historically where they talk about those that were lowered to the earth or those that fell from the earth, then you find what they call the Nephilim, but
Yeah.
also the ancient Sumerians, the ancient Babylonians, they call them the Anunnaki.
Anunnaki from
And listen how close the syllabic is of the Anunnaki Anishinaabe.
yeah.
And then you go with the whole definition where they're almost the same. And
Yeah.
then when you talk to some elders, there are some elders that will proclaim that we are the descendants of Atlantis. There are some that say we come from a constellation that is circular in the sky. And then there are some that say we've been here since the creation of Earth.
What if they're all right? What if
Well,
that's all?
I can easily find a sliver of truth in all of them.
And it could well be that they are all true, as in, yes, we are descended of some star race out there. Yes, we are. We have been here forever, maybe some intraterrestrial race. They're supposed to be very tall, the intraterrestrials. Yes, we are, I mean, you could go down the list. We're probably very mixed up. I mean, I when I went down this rabbit hole, it got real weird real quick, because I mean, this was back in the day of Whitley Strieber being a big thing. So
Oh, I met him.
actually, oh, cool. Oh, there's a question. Whoops, I have to come up with I have to say the question. YJ Overlander asked, in 1985, there were 4 billion humans incarnated on Earth. I almost said incarcerated. That was kind of close, wasn't it? That was a Freudian slop. In 2022, there are 8 billion with a B. Whoa. So it's doubled. Where did the other 4 billion souls come from? Isn't that interesting?
Well, the biggest challenge is what is the denotation of a soul?
Exactly.
Because we 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 have all of these perspectives of what it is. The soul, the essence, the energy, the electromagnetic field, the electricity, the power, the essence. Did I say essence? My ancestors, one of the words we use for the soul is manatu.
Maratu.
And another one of the words, English words to describe that word is mystery or unknown.
I'm a great unknown. Not too many people know about me yet.
And well, that's actually where, when you hear people talk about great spirit,
Mm-hmm.
that that terminology came from the Anishinaabe people. When I did my introduction, according to protocol, I gave thanks to the creator or Gitchi Manadu.
Chichimanadu.
Gitchi means abundantly, the largest, huge, um, uh, uh, just in that vernacular. Manatu
Right?
means like soul, spirit, essence, unknown, mystery, energy,
Great
you know.
mystery, great spirit. So
Right.
that is
So
great.
so that's
Mm-hmm.
where they came with that whole term. The Native Americans talk about the great spirit.
Not to be confused with a song about Gitchy Gitchy, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not the same. But,
Depending on the perspective.
oh, maybe it is. I don't know. I sort of believe that everything is God, though. But this kind of leads to discussions about the oversoul. So the great spirit, what does that mean? The great big one, big, big one,
Well,
the infinite one, perhaps even.
with science, as we look at the as above and so below, because we're all, unfortunately, is it man that's all about smash it apart. What's it made of? Break it down, break it down. And this is the definition of quantifying, but quantum is also reinvigorating the cult of BBs. you know,
Cult.
be, well, because people look at, when you break it down into these smaller and smaller particulates, they look like a sphere. And when you take the image or the picture of the sphere, you see that like Oort cloud. You see the sphere, but not in like solidness, and as you keep getting smaller and smaller, you keep finding a smaller and smaller sphere. And so if you think of like your outlet, your outlet is a open circuit, and that circuit isn't closed until two prongs are put into the outlet, because then you close the circuit of positive and negative, and so then you have that energy will flow through the circuitry of your house. And this is the same with like your neurotransmitters and receivers in your body. In this microscopic perspective, you have these little micro spheres of energy within your cells. And that's like the little micro generator that is keeping that cell alive. And
Mitochondria?
well, I mean, again, perspective. We can get caught up into semantics. On Star Wars they called it metachlorites. But
I'm just saying because mitochondria, supposedly we all got that from our mom, whatever our mom's mitochondria were. But which is interesting.
Well, I mean, even there in the microscopic of the Big Bang, you know, at some point your father had an erection where he ejaculated, and all of that spermazoa found its way, and that specific out of billions, that specific little sperm had an electromagnetic union with that egg. If you witness
Right.
if you witness the insemination of an egg, you will
Mm-hmm.
see that the sperm will do a spiral, that they will gather in clusters of spirals around the egg, and they will do like a spiral dance to where they get to the center and they will try to push or penetrate the egg. And they continue to do this until at one moment that sperm is able to penetrate the egg. The minute that it penetrates the egg, the tail snaps off, causing an instantaneous hardening of the ovum, so it cannot be inseminated again. As soon as that shell is created, when it goes down the fallopian tube into the womb, then it will attach itself to the wall of the womb, where it starts its mitosis in creating an incredible organ for the whole process of life to be germinated. You know,
Oh,
so to think we are not miracles to me is simply ridiculous. To
well,
not acknowledge that we are miracles is even worse.
I agree.
And
We
as we
very
live in this world of absolute ignorance, and I am the first one to admit I am not only the most ignorant person I know, but the stupidest entity I know. And in this existence of ignorance, we have been socially conditioned by the powers that should not be to believe that nothing is worth something, i.e., money, dollar bills, and something is worth nothing, human life.
right. And time, and the time that you have on Earth
That's,
is
well, that's, sorry, I'm having a total deja vu with the argument of time, because time is an illusion and all you have is your
right.
lifetime. That's it. How long are you going to be alive? Your lifetime. How long am I going to be alive? My lifetime. And nobody knows when that shall be.
Well, I had a dream about it actually. So some of us sometimes we know,
Well, may you be
but I
right.
didn't stay dead. I didn't stay dead though. I mean, to be fair, I I was only dead for a little while. So um it wasn't quite like you know, but technically, does that make me undead? Just in time for Halloween. But somebody was saying in here, oh, Circle K. Interesting that your word for the spirit is mana too. Manitou, like manna. And that is interesting. I hadn't thought of it.
Well, that's the
Well,
beauty about syllables and etymology. And when you look historically, how did we come up with this language and along with the social conditioning that imagine if we were raised to where all of a sudden I said, Ipitubapu, and it was the worst horrific thing that you've ever been manipulated to think it is. So if I just sat here and said, Pipitipatu, everybody would just be getting outraged because he said, he used his lips and moved them in a mannerism as the air came over his vocal cords and as it created those syllables. And because of that conditioning, we're outraged.
And some woke person gets triggered.
Well,
Oh, triggered. They're triggered.
well,
Everybody's triggered.
yeah.
YJ Overlander says, my theory is that there are 4 billion alien souls right now occupying hybrid bodies that have been being created through the hybrid program for a slow takeover. That is possible. I can't say.
Well, if we look at in our existence,
Trigger warning.
if we look from our birth to our death, from that first breath in this system, we utilize petrochemicals in the forms of additives, preservatives, herbicides, pesticides, and we plasticide our bodies by eating this stuff. Then upon our deaths, we go and we get an autopsy where they fill, or we go to the morgue, where they fill our body again with formaldehyde, embalming fluid, where again they plasticize us even more. And then they and then they put us in a hermetically sealed coffin and they seal it. And then after that, they put us in a concrete block in the ground. And according to the Bible, it says ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And if our bodies are not allowed to deteriorate naturally into the earth, why would we believe that we shall be reincarnated?
Unless they want zombies.
Well, yeah, I get the whole love of zombies, especially when I was younger and wanted to be a special effects makeup artist.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that fear of zombies is the reason why they do that. Because not only do they do that, but when they go to embalm you, they take out all of your organs and they cut them up and they weigh them.
Greetings and favor to you, too, David Castle. David Castle has made it in to the chat. Hello, David. Indeed. Ooh.
And then another strange one too is like if you watch all of these movies of the horror genre, supernatural genre, how is it that they can ultimately destroy the evil entity, but to burn it, to light it on fire? And so people are like, I'm going to get cremated.
Mm-hmm.
So should we really go into the light? Because one hell of a light is the sun, and that's pretty hot. And the next hot, bright light would be a fire. It's better to burn out than fade away.
It's better to burn out because Russ never sleeps. And YJ Overlander, who is a deep thinker, says it's true that we are plasticizing our bodies. Canola oil, margarine is one chemical process away from plastic. Our bodies cannot metabolize it, so we just store it. Yellow.
If you look up Dartmouth College, they have incredible selections of studies on the impact of petrochemical particulates in the human body. And according to their studies, they say even micro particulates of petrochemical will disrupt the optimal performance of functioning the way your body is designed. And allegedly, within a month, we have digested enough plastic to make a credit card.
Well, doggone, I'd like to print up a few credit cards for myself, a few spare ones. But I don't think that's what you mean by that. So.
Well, just go to Puerto Rico and say, I want to borrow against my New York Stock Exchange number, i.e., birth certificate number.
Mm. You can do that in Puerto Rico?
Well, Puerto Rico is supposedly where they keep all the records to the
Oh,
citizens of
that's what
America.
the Puerto Rico thing is. So why Jay is saying even peanut butter, they remove the peanut oil and replace it with canola. So only buy natural peanut butter. Oh, okay. I guess that I've been doing that for a while. Now the problem is, okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry, whoever you are. I'm going to have to decline the call. Somebody is trying to call me, and it's not going to happen. So
That's the powers that should not be giving us that call and saying, hey, we said you can talk about some stuff, but not everything.
ah ah, and YJ says I like your guest. He's super chill and well learned. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, why do you think I have him on? Huh? YJ? Why do you think I have him on even?
I'm full of
Ah,
wisdom.
yeah. I knew you guys would dig it. I knew you guys would dig it. That's why. Anyway, we have, well, some of us have known NeSe from some other shows too. So basically, we knew
I'm a
that about.
whore. I've been around.
He's been around, girl. Um, so
Oh, there goes
I'm
my
glad.
political career.
Oh, yeah, you can talk about your political career for a minute.
Oh, which time?
Which time? Well,
Yeah.
is it which time? It's not which time yet. Which time is later on in the month, isn't it?
Midnight. We can go into midnight. Okay, politics. Poly meaning many, ticks, blood sucking entity.
Sucking
I
blood sucking
do
parasites, right?
not fully understand my desire to put my name label in the political arena. I have done it. This is going to be my fourth time that I'm rolling for mayor of Moorhead, Minnesota. At one time of the cycle, I put my name in the United States 7th District of Minnesota representative. And at the beginning of the spring, the Secretary of State of Minnesota declined my affidavit of, what was it called? My affidavit of candidacy for governor of Minnesota because a political party known by the state, Grassroots Legalized Cannabis, I was their choice of endorsement for governor of Minnesota. But because a blind man, i.e., me, cannot fill out a piece of paper, they rejected my affidavit of candidacy because the individual that filled it out accidentally marked a check box that should not have been checked. And they used it as an excuse to reject me rolling for governor of Minnesota.
You want to explain why you're rolling?
Well, I can't run because I'm crippled up in a wheelchair. And so I'm
That's what he means.
rolling.
Rolling, 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 keep rolling, rolling, rolling.
I know, and I wanted to use that one song for my theme song. They see me rolling, they're hating, patrolling, they're trying to catch me riding dirty, trying to catch me riding nerdy.
um, Bomber says, NeSe, you do it to infiltrate the talking heads and make an actual difference.
Our house till the party's over, burning down the house.
And YJ thinks you need an Iron Man suit.
I am Iron Man.
Bom, 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 bom. Okay, now you're getting the vaudeville portion of the show.
Yeah, I have a love of music, and if I'm gonna go anywhere with my ego or my hubris, it is about my love of singing. A lot of
Uh,
times when I hear somebody say a few lines from a song, all of a sudden the song is playing in my head.
Me too. Or yeah, or actually almost anything anybody says is a line from a song because I know a lot of songs. So in my head, there is constant music going. Almost everything everybody says has a song with those words in, somewhere in it. And so a lot of times that sets off that's the cue for the music to play in my head.
Aren't
In
we
my
always?
head, zombie, zombie. Anyway, um, I wonder about
Oh, you
what
want me
do
to
you think?
tease? I'm going to tease you, D.
Oh, good. That'll be the DTs. Wait a
So,
minute.
so for my daughter's birth recognition date, I gave her an unopened David Bowie 6 album collection set from
Oh, you bitch! You
19
bitch! You bitch! You bitch! Oh, excuse me.
from 1990
Oh, wow.
unopened.
Right. I'm envious. I'm very envious.
And she had to promise me that she would never open it. And if she wants, I will buy her on her Spotify or Apple Music or whatever her
The
choice
music
of.
to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, do not. She
Just
wants to.
don't open it.
I
Right.
know I'm a little bummed out because she wants to get a record player. And
Oh no.
when I was in the Navy, my parents threw away my milk crates of albums.
Yeah. Well, I kept a lot of mine all the way. Yeah, I had some go too, but I kept mine all the way up until I became homeless. And then the person that I was renting space from, it was supposed to be keeping my stuff, they took them and just kind of, yeah. I managed to keep mine a good long time, but they had no idea what they were worth, of course. It's like the comic books. My dad sold the comic books, right? Your dad sells your comic books at the at the family yard sale, and you're like, no, and then years later you go, oh shit, you know.
The biggest thing I got upset was when I joined the military. I had an old ancient hammer, and it was a big, huge stone, and it weighed about 12 pounds. And it looked kind of like a bullet, but it wasn't really pointy. It was more domed than pointy. And
Yeah.
about 1/4 down from the top was like a groove to where they split the log. So the log would go around it and then they would bind it.
Hmm.
And this was a hammer.
Wow.
And yeah, that I was given when I was a kid by my grandparents' neighbor, Ray Witt, because all I talked about was natives and Indians. And he's like, I have something for you. And he dug in the back of his little utility shed. It was an old out ice house, one of the old wooden ice houses. And he dug back there and he found this old hammerhead and gave it to me. And he explained to me how it was and how they made it. And yeah. And they threw it away. I've actually thought about going back to my house that I lived in before I joined the Navy and check the backyard and see if maybe they just put it in the backyard or something.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we had I had some things like that, sort of. And my swords, my ex kept my swords, most of them. My my mom got rid of the ones that I did have left. I don't know. Um, just you know what really bummed me is that I was always making things. But when my dad died, people came over and took the tools. So I got some of my own. And then my mother's second husband died, and people came, and I had my tools stored in the garage there, and people came and took the tools, my tools. I'm like, why am I not allowed to have my own dead tools? No, so now I
You're
have a toolbox
tooling
and I carefully
yourself
guard
and
it.
don't believe.
What?
No, that song, You're Fooling Yourselves, but I changed it to You're Tooling Yourself.
Oh, you're tooling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Oh, and Circle K says, hey there, David. Somebody else loves David Bowie. Oh, and Circle K is in love with Jim Morrison.
Oh,
Okay.
and did he die? 27.
And YJ Overlander still has all of the comics. You. Oh, mm, the McFarlane Spider-Man, the X-Men. Oh man, the
Some
first
people are
Mutant Ninja
fortunate.
Turtles, the Silver Surfer, the Fabulous Furry Freak Brother. Uh, boy, okay, well,
Isn't that crazy about how we decide that this, that, and the other thing? Again, the powers that should not be in the social conditioning that I got in trouble with one of my partners because I did not like art. Because I'm like, art is in the eye of the beholder. And because somebody, put $1 million price tag on it, doesn't mean it's art. But in the social conditioning, we select these individuals that usually were pushed forth by money to make money. And then we call it art. And then we get into the whole bourgeois. And it's like, oh, look at this painting I have. It cost me $20 million. And allegedly, majority of all the art in the museums are all replicates. And some trillionaire has the actual in their home, or better yet, I like the theory that they're all in the mountains of Switzerland, like all the original famous artworks and the
Shih Tzus come from, no. Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm looking for questions.
forget going into the Library of the Vatican. I would rather go into the mountains of Switzerland.
YJ thinks the best art is made by 6-year-olds and ends up under a refrigerator magnet. Uh, David Bowie. Oh, something David. David was an artist too. And one thing he told me was the thing about art that makes it so valuable in the art world is actually the backstory. It's not really. Now, in the days of the old masters, they talk about, all of this technique and blah, blah, blah. No. In the art world today, the value of art is determined by the backstory. What is the story of the piece? And that is why you see some things that are absolute crap. sell for a lot of money. Okay. So just a side thing that he told me that, and he told me that posthumously. But I was going, wow, David, it's like that makes so much sense now. Why you can look at something and go, why the hell would that be worth millions of dollars? When, I think I could probably give a chimpanzee a paintbrush. I've seen elephants make much better art, you know?
One of my
That's me.
favorite art of David Bowie is Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence.
Oh, yeah? I don't think I've seen that one.
That movie? Oh my, what?
Oh, not the movie. Oh, no, no. I meant he was an artist, as in he painted.
Well, he was an actor too.
Yeah, he was also an actor. And he
Yeah.
was a singer, and he was also a musician, and he was also um, my
But a
online
lot of
voice.
his music was a combination of his creation. Not all of
Yeah,
it. He wrote his own stuff
all
too,
goes
but
together.
he had a lot of collaboration going on.
It all goes together. It all
Spiders
goes
from
together.
Mars played it left hand, but played it too far.
It's
Dance,
interesting because
baby, dance.
I have that kind of. I mean, I'm doing the same thing. I mean, usually if you're an artist, you're an artist in a lot of different ways. It's just the way that the creativity flows through you.
Or do
Um,
people do the ceremonies and rituals to have the walk ins or the possession of the great, oh, come on, muse? Now we're getting into Hollywood and entertainment.
it's entertainment.
And
You
their
went to a
rituals and
small
ceremonies.
gathering. Ooh, poor David Castle went to a small gathering of people without thoughts and ideas. You went to Washington?
Washington disease NeSe for the USA 2024.
Okay. I'm just kidding David Castle about. Yeah. Anyway, yeah,
I'll
we've
do
got.
a presidential rolling for vice president. Cannabis for president, NeSe for vice president. That way, when cannabis wins the election, you know they'll murder it, and then I'll get president by default.
Mhm.
You can call it
Oh, and
the blind campaign.
there's so much to that. Well, we can't go into a lot of it though because we're already walking on. We're walking on some. We got to walk carefully
We're
on
walking on sunshine.
hard.
Bobber, how was the wild rice harvest?
Or we might as well be walking on the sun then, right?
Better yet, better yet, how could we not all find that ember of light within to shine brighter and brighter every day so eventually we can show everybody the way that we illuminate greater and greater, where eventually the earth will be the second sun because we all shine so brightly.
Good morning, starshine. And Gemini Moon is happy to have found out that she can come to Canada now without the abomination, without the experimental pharmaceutical. And that is happy. Now the thing is will you be able to come back into the United States?
On your way to Canada, if you're going up Highway 29, come and visit me.
Highway 29. Get your kicks on Highway 29. We really need our Woo Crew bus, you know?
We used
We
to
really,
call it Speculation Island on Freaky Friday.
Speculation Island.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And we called it Freaky Friday with the Woo Crew.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
That's mine, I tell you.
No, we've been calling us the Woo Crew for about 4 years.
My Woo Crew is in a spaceship. Yeah.
You know what I
Okay.
proclaim is mine
What?
is the phrase, the powers that should not be.
I like
And
that.
and Brent from Paranormal Portal, he pointed that out like 5 years ago. Because when I was on TFR, he was commenting about how all of the hosts on TFR are now using the powers that should not be, because that's what I used to call them. I think I did it with Joyce Riley when I used to go on her show. She used to have the Power Hour on GC, and wow, flashbacks of the days, the days. I couldn't stay in this realm for too long because it was getting too depressing about 20 around 2010 to 2013.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of just bad mouthing each other, the different hosts and the different networks. And yeah, it was a sad.
Well, there was a lot of, yeah, I don't,
Well, we were finding out that all of these hosts are human,
yeah.
which is an excuse that I don't care to say. I don't even like to be labeled a human, you know?
What would you
Well,
rather? You rather just be a
Anishinaabe.
NeSe?
Well, this goes back to my labels, you know? The
Yeah.
biggest challenge I feel that we have as entities is having to realize that the labels we proclaim are going to be filtered by the experience of the observer. So if you claim this, that, or the other, your definition of those terms may not be the same as the observer. And so, why do we get so bent out of shape where it's like, you don't understand me? And more times than not, it isn't about understanding, it's about agreeing and validating another entity's truth. I would like to get some t shirts made that say something like, I prescribe to the American Heritage Dictionary, or I prescribe to the Oxford Dictionary, or the Webster's Dictionary.
So that we
Because,
can just have some kind of common. Here we go with the Tower of Babel again, isn't it?
well, it's the whole, semantics. You know, uh, an example in the Anishinaabe language, when we talk about colors, we talk about like the 9, 10 colors, and then we describe it like, red like that cardinal bird, or red like an apple, or red like a strawberry, but we have, the primary colors, the secondary colors. And I think the secondary colors should be the primary colors and not the other way around. But that's just my thoughts on it.
Which
You
would
know,
be orange, purple, and green.
green, yes, yes,
Yeah,
because I
I'm
look at them
not
in a
color.
sense. Yeah, I look at them in the sense that they took two colors and absorbed it to become a color,
Mm-hmm.
where you have your primaries of red, blue, and yellow, which interesting is the color of the liquids in the body. We have our veins and our arteries, and the blood color is red in one and blue in the other, and we urinate, and that's yellow.
Yep.
Interesting. Then, of course, you have the other.
You forgot about snot green. Well, if it's green, what is it? I'm kidding.
But
Snot green.
then we have the hue: white, gray, black. Now we have a total of 9. And what color do you think the 10th color would be?
Clear.
Exactly.
Got it. Woohoo! Woohoo! Okay. My little celebration is over.
Dodecahedron. Uh-oh. I hope there's no Pythagoreans around.
Hey, are any of you Pythagoreans?
Well, you know, those Pythagoreans supposedly, if somebody would make such a proclamation out in public, they could be executed.
That's true. Well, you could be executed for any. Well, you know what? I'm very hard pressed to think of a single time in history when it was ever safe to say the truth. Because if you think about it, people have been getting in trouble for the truth for the whole of history, as far as we can tell, if history is actually a thing, which is very, you know,
Well, that's where
I
I
think it
joke.
was Twain, Mark Twain, that said, uh, what is it? 90% of history is made up, the rest is lies.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me of my 80-20 rule, where the powers that should not be will use 80% BS and sprinkle 20% truth on it, and everybody will believe it's all true. And
Yeah.
then they'll do the same where it's 80% truth and sprinkle 20% BS on it, and everybody will think it's BS.
Yeah. This is why you got to be careful. Which is why, like I say, experiencers, we respect it here. There are a lot of people, and I think it was YJ that was saying he changed his mind about a lot of things that actually even happened to him. I mean, a lot of times you look back at your experiences in retrospect and see them in a whole different way. And it wasn't that you were trying to prevaricate or be untruthful. It was just that looking at the filter you were looking with at that time, it seemed like something entirely different was going on. But then you got a different perspective and you realize that maybe it could have been something else entirely.
Well, another story is partners were making dinner, and the individual takes the roast and is putting it in the pan to put it in the oven, and she cuts off both ends of the roast and puts it on the side of the roast. And
I
says,
yeah, go ahead.
her husband says, "Why are you doing that?" And she said, "Because my mother did it." And he's like, "Well, why does she do it?" And she's like, "I don't know." And so they call her mother and they say, "Mom, you know, when you cook roast, you would cut the ends off and put it on the side of the roast. Why did you do that?" And her mother's reply was, "Because the pan was too small."
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I
so
heard
it's,
it with a turkey. You cut the legs off.
Why do you cut these off? Because the pan was too small. We didn't have a big enough pan for the darn turkey, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, and so we get conditioned, with the repetitive cycle to where we are desensitized of the cycle because we've seen it so many times. And this is that disruptiveness of change, because there's nothing more disruptive to a cycle than adding another cycle.
Yeah.
And we're in the flow of things and we're like, yay, it's all flowing, and this is the powers that should not be when you get into sacred geometry, and you can see that the numbers counted, the shekels counted, are for a specific reasoning. If you look at it, you have a circle and add 1 point at the end of the statement, there's a point or a period of when it goes around the circle, and another point is added. Where do they find equality on the circle? As another point is added, and eventually you start getting different angles of the center perspective. So if you have many angles looking over you, or if you have many angels looking over you, you find in the 4 corners of the circle 4 arcs, 4 arc angles, 4 arch angels that are protecting us from all quadrants. And then as you continue adding points and finding equality, you realize the Platonic solids. And then from there, you see how all of these points add up to numbers that add up to frequencies and wavelengths and spectrum analysis to more seismic, beautiful, crystalline features or symbols. And then all of a sudden you find out that these symbols are utilized, like the Noah's Ark or the 33 degrees arc.
Right.
Where you can find the encapsulation, because we all live under a dome, and that dome is your cranium.
Hey, Justin. Justin Case came in. Just in case. Hello.
You should probably
Yeah.
do a little dopamine fix for the YouTube viewers. Thank you all for being here and listen to me babbling on in Babylon. Who's all here?
I'm just about to lose power very soon in my phone because we're doing this on my phone. So it has been, by the way, over 2 hours, NeSe. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Your time. If there's anything you want to finish saying, because I'm about to run out of battery. Please say it now or hold your pieces until next time. But we really want you back on again. I'm sure everybody wants to see you back here sometime, because it's been absolutely, it's been marvelous, darling, and you know who you are.
Well, I appreciate the precious moments sharing with you and sharing my perspective, and didn't get too much into, well, I shared a couple of experiences. Hopefully I gave something for this equivalent exchange so I can be happy on the
Oh, we're happy, aren't we? Yes, everybody's applauding. Yes.
good, because I want to make sure that you guys gain as much out of this experience as I did, having the opportunity to share, because I care.
I care too. That's why I try to get the best guests on. I mean, I really do try and think who is going to blow your socks off? Who is going to be amazing? Who is going to say who is going to talk about the kind of things you want to hear about?
Well,
So
definitely in November, closer to Turkey Day, we can really take the leash off and watch me go after that whole invasion of America, where those poor Paleo Americans.
Merca. You know what? I've heard people actually say merkin. Do you know what, when you look it up, what merkin means? Merkin is a pubic wig.
Merkaba.
No,
Merkaba.
a merkaba is something different. A merkin, I believe it's M-E or M-U-R-K or C-A-N. Merkin. Somebody showed it to me. It's a pubic wig. Merkin. And I'm like, oh, some people are calling themselves pubic wigs when they're trying to say American. But yeah, Merkaba is an entirely different subject that we will have to get into next time. Next time. And I will torture you again.
Sounds good. Just keep in touch, and thank you all. Please share the giggles throughout the chaos and new world order of it all. And Apegish Mino Bima Daziwe Riyan, and toodles.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you, dear viewers, for coming on my show and listening to our offerings here. And I would also thank you to like, share, subscribe, and do all of that fancy stuff to help my channel get seen and known by people. Because I am just a tiny little channel in a jungle full of, you know. I'm trying to wander through this, and I already know that I'm being screwed with by the algorithms. So any little bit counts. Thank you so much. And remember, the truth is where you find it. I hope you're finding some here. And you are divine. And you create. So create wisely. And there are so many people leaving right now, and there will be more, and we'll talk about that soon. I will see you next time. I hope. But if I don't see you live, come and visit me. You know, if something happens between now and then, just come visit me. I'm a medium. It's okay. Okay, love you guys. Good night.